Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into something that has always fascinated me.
Ooh, okay.
Fire.
Fire. Yeah.
And more specifically,
Uh,
why fire is so prevalent
okay.
in ceremonies
Right.
across so many cultures.
Yeah.
Like, why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I think it's a question a lot of people have probably thought about but haven't really dove into.
Right.
And thankfully, we had some source material here
Okay, great.
titled, Why is Fire Used Ceremonially?
Okay.
That is going to help us break this down.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Me too. And I think a good place to start
Okay.
would be, like, right off the bat,
Okay.
what are some things that we
Yeah.
all associate with fire?
Yeah. What comes to mind for you?
Well, I was actually just looking at a picture of a bonfire the other day,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
they got me thinking about, like,
Yeah.
even just gathering around a bonfire.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's something so primal and communal about that.
Absolutely. Like deep in our DNA, we're drawn to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, even the simplest act of lighting a candle
Right.
can be so powerful. Think about like lighting a candle to remember someone that you've lost.
Yeah.
Or, you know, even like the Olympic torch,
Right.
which has come to represent like unity and this spirit of competition.
Right.
I think those are great examples.
Yeah, and they're both so different, but they both use fire.
Exactly. And it speaks to how fire can evoke these like deeply rooted emotions and these really like shared experiences.
Right.
And I'm looking at the source material here
Okay.
and they talk about langar.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of that?
I'm not sure I have, actually.
It's a tradition in Sikhism
Okay.
where they have this community kitchen
Okay.
and it's all about like preparing and sharing food.
Okay.
And a lot of times this is done
Yeah.
over an open fire.
Wow.
And it really like embodies the idea of equality and
Right.
togetherness.
Like that communal aspect again.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like the flames themselves are like weaving a connection between people.
Oh, that's a really cool way of putting it.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So powerful.
Especially because the food is being cooked over it.
Right.
And then you're all sharing it together.
Exactly. And everyone is kind of like bathed in the warm glow of this fire.
There's a picture here, actually, in the source material
Oh, okay. Let me see that.
of
Yeah.
what looks like a langar.
Okay.
It's from Godong Alamy stock photo.
Oh, wow.
And just the way that the flickering flames are illuminating everybody's faces.
It really,
You can feel that sense of warmth and intimacy.
yeah, there's this immediate feeling of connection
Right.
when you look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think fire goes beyond just this sort of like
Okay.
physical communal element.
Right.
And this is where I think things get really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Like it seems to bridge that gap between
Yeah,
the physical and the spiritual.
absolutely. I mean, the source material
Yeah.
uses the terms divine
Right.
and eternal.
Right.
And it's talking about how fire can connect us to something greater than ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So what are some examples of
Yeah.
how different cultures
Yeah.
represent that divine connection through fire?
Okay, so in Zoroastrianism,
Okay.
they have this sacred fire called the Atash Bahram,
Okay.
and it burns continuously in their temples.
Wow. So it never goes out.
Right. It's
Yeah.
meant to symbolize purity
Wow.
and the presence of Ahura Mazda.
Who is that?
That is their god.
Okay, so it's like this tangible representation of
Yeah.
their God's presence.
Yes, and the eternal nature of it
Right.
speaks to that idea of like the divine,
Okay.
which is something beyond our comprehension, you know?
Right.
So fire is like a way to sort of like grasp at that.
I see.
Okay.
That's a really cool example.
Yeah, and we see something similar in Judaism.
Okay.
They have what's called the Ner Tamid,
Okay.
which is an eternal flame that is kept burning in synagogues.
And what does that represent?
So this flame represents God's everlasting presence.
Okay.
And it's also like a symbol of the covenant
Right.
that God made with the Jewish people.
Okay, so again, it's like that constant
Exactly.
reminder of that presence.
Yes.
Even though you can't see it.
Right. It's like this tangible representation
Wow.
of something that's intangible.
So we've got remembrance, we've got divine connection.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect of fire that I think is super interesting.
What's that?
And that's how it ties into life cycles and renewal.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I mean, just think about a forest fire.
Right.
It's destructive, for sure.
Right.
But then it clears the way for new growth.
Right. Like from the ashes.
Exactly.
Something new is born.
And the source material actually dives into Hinduism,
Okay.
where fire plays a really significant role
Okay.
in symbolizing this cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
Wow.
It's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Trimurti?
I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is.
Okay, so basically it's like
Okay.
the three primary gods in Hinduism.
Okay.
And one of them is Shiva,
Okay.
who is known as like the destroyer god.
Okay.
But it's not like destruction in a bad way.
Right.
It's about like to make way for new creation.
Right.
And so Shiva is seen as like a key player
Okay.
in this cycle of like destruction and renewal.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so they actually use fire in a lot of their rituals to
Right.
represent this idea of
Right.
like consuming and then like,
Rebirth.
yeah, exactly.
It's so interesting how
Yeah,
it's like fire is almost like nature itself in a way.
absolutely.
Like that constant change, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
that creation and destruction.
Right, it's like a never-ending cycle.
Makes you wonder if that's part of the reason why we find it so captivating.
That's such a good point. Like,
Yeah.
is it that reminder of that constant change that's happening all around us that
Yeah.
draws us to it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
And speaking of cycles and balance,
Okay.
there's actually a really interesting parallel
Okay.
in Navajo tradition.
Okay.
There's this concept called Jose.
Hosing.
Yeah. And it's all about like living in balance and harmony with everything, like
Yeah.
with nature, with each other.
Okay.
And the goal is to achieve well-being
Okay.
for yourself and for the community.
And how does this relate to fire?
Well, it's not necessarily directly related to fire,
Okay.
but it's that same idea of like
Right.
cyclical renewal and balance
Okay.
that we see represented in Hinduism through the Trimurti.
So even though it's a different cultural context,
Right.
it's still emphasizing
Exactly.
those same themes.
It's incredible, isn't it, how these themes just echo across cultures?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think, like we've talked about, how fire is used for remembrance,
Right.
for symbolism,
Yeah.
connecting us to the divine,
Yeah.
representing life cycles.
Mhm.
All these things
It's amazing.
wrapped up in this one element.
It really speaks to the power of symbols,
Right.
doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Fire, this seemingly simple element,
Yeah.
has transcended cultural boundaries
Right.
to hold this deep spiritual and symbolic meaning for humanity.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and it kind of leaves me with this question.
Yeah.
What personal connections do you draw to fire and its significance?
Yeah. That's something I think we could all think about.
Definitely something to ponder.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive, everyone.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, this was great.
Really interesting.
I hope you learned something,
Me too.
and we will see you next time.
See you later.